Welcome students once again to the class of Pricing and Product Decisions. This is your faculty Dr. Shweta Srivastav, Associate Professor, School of Management, BBD University. So students, in the previous lecture, I let you know that howsoever cost is important, but price has its another role to play, right? So we know that total revenue depends on two things, that is price and quantity. So that is why I have explained you the relationship between price and quantity in the name of price elasticity, right? So in the previous lecture, I told you that before making any changes in the prices or before adopting any pricing strategy, it is required from the point of marketer to understand the relationship between price and quantity. Is the quantity demanded responsive to the price? If yes, the marketer should be careful, right? So before adopting any pricing strategy or before adopting any costing structure, it is required from the manufacturer to understand the price and quantity relationship. That is what I have explained you in the previous lecture. So students, let us understand the all other things which can be helpful in setting a price. So determinants of price, right? So the first is demand for the product. As I told you that this is what we have learned in the previous lecture. So if the demand is high, what will happen? The prices will automatically go up because because the price will be same. So the supply will be same. So the equilibrium will always be set at a higher level. So if the demand for the product is high, the price will automatically be high, right? Next comes the cost of production and capacity. See students, this is the part which I have explained you in the part 1 and part 2 of this paper, that what the floor for pricing is always cost. So cost of production and capacity is one thing which can control prices. So I told you also that if you want to increase profit, what you are left in your hands, it is the cost. So if you are reducing your cost, what will happen? Your prices will be set lower, and in a way you are going to beat the competition, and thereby you will earn more profit and will win more market share. So it is the duty of every manufacturer to optimize the cost of production and go for full capacity utilization, right? Next comes the objectives of the producers. See students, it is very important to see what is the overall philosophy of the organization. What is the overall culture? I am giving you one example. If I say Tata, they have produced first non-electricity based water purifier in the name of Tata Swachh. They have not looked for profit. Rather, they have looked for the necessity of the customer, right? So it was priced as less than rupees 1000 because that product was developed, innovated to cater to the needs of the persons who have suffered from tsunami, right? So here the objective was to serve society, not to make the profit. That is why the prices were set low. The same goes with the Tata Nano. In fact, the cost of production was much higher, but the prices were set close to 1 lakh rupees because Sir Ratan Tata has considered that the overall population of India lies in the economic belt, right? So that is why he has produced a car which can be well afforded by lower middle class, right? So we have to see what is the objective of the producer. But if we look at other manufacturers, the other companies who are only into making profit, so they will not look the purchasing power of a common man. Rather, they will look only for their profits, right? So we have to see what is the basic objective of the producer. Is it for the society at large, or it is only just to make profit, right? So if the objective is just to make profit, the prices will be higher. Now comes the nature of the product. This thing I have already covered during explanation of price elasticity, that if the product is necessity, you can play with the prices, because even if the prices are high, the consumer will buy, right? Next comes the nature of competition in the market. If the competition is high, you are not able to you are not able to set the prices high, because in that situation the customer will move to the competitor. He will move to the substitute, because at the lesser prices he will be getting the same utility, same consumption. Next comes the environmental policy or the government policy pertaining to it. Here I want to cite one example, that is of Maruti MUL, right? See, Maruti 800 was the first privileged car of a middle class society in India, right? But what happened? That car is gradually phased from the Indian roads only because of environmental policy. Let me tell you how. Because this car was invented, or this car was created to cater the needs of middle class of Indian society. So the price bracket was between 2 lakh to 3 lakhs, right? But because of changes in the environmental policy, the engine should be now according to the Euro 4 norms. So if the company has two options, either to deploy Euro 4 engine in Maruti 800, and or to phase out the Maruti, because if that Euro 4 engine is was deployed in Maruti 800, the ultimate price would have risen to close to Maruti Alto, right? So that could have resulted in brand cannibalization. It means they will come in the same price bracket, Maruti 800 and Maruti Alto. So that is why they have removed both the cars from the market, and they have given a new variant, that is Maruti 800 Alto. That was the next alternative of Alto 800, next alternative of Maruti Alto and 800, that is Maruti 800 Alto 800, right? So they have combined two variants of the car because of one factor, that is environmental policy. So because they cannot rise the price, they have to phase out their product. So pricing also depends on the environmental policy. Sometimes the green technology or the parts are costly if you are abiding by the environmental policy norms, right? So this is also one factor to determine price. Next comes the competitors, right? The price of the competing products, because you have to set prices at par with your competitors, because since they are close substitutes of each other, you cannot take the risk of increasing the prices. Next comes the new firms entering the market. When the industry seems lucrative to other marketers, what happens? The other players will also join the bandwagon, and what happens, gradually the profit margin deteriorates, right? Because that is the total profit margin is now consumed by more number of players. So we have to see that also. So if new firms are coming, we have to lower down the prices, so that the new firms may feel that yes, there is lesser profit margin, so it's better to stay away from such industry. So you can also see how new firms are taking this industry. It is lucrative or it is not attractive. Next comes the pricing policy changes by the customers. See, whenever you are playing in a market, you have to accommodate the changes happening in the market. So if your competitors are raising the price, you are also supposed to increase the price. Otherwise, the customers sometimes feel that, oh, its price is less, it means they are using the inferior quality inputs, right? So you have to also keep an eye on the moves of the competitors. So you can not make your pricing policy in as a standalone system. You have to accommodate the changes made by the competitors or the changes made by the new entrants, right? Next comes the government policy. The government policy means the custom and excise duties and other taxes, licensed capacity, controlled and dual pricing. Controlled means where the government has fixed, like in case of essential commodities, we have minimum support prices, we have dual pricing. It means the electricity charges for rural area is different, the electricity charges for urban area is different. So that is dual pricing. So we have to see all such things also, because see, we also have seen that because of imposition of GST, so many things have changed, right? So government policy also decides all the pricing structure. Now comes the substitutes and complements, right? See, the price of the substitute, we have to keep the prices low from substitutes, because otherwise the customer will switch to substitute. Now comes the complement. Complements are those goods without which your product will not come to its functional stage, like pen and ink. Like for bat, it is ball. So you have to see, if the ball is getting costlier, you have to reduce the cost of price of bat, because otherwise the product in total will be of high price, because you can play simply with ball, but you cannot play with bat alone. So if the prices of balls are rising, you have to somehow compromise with the price of bat, so that the customer will buy a ball also, right? So this is how the prices of substitutes and complements govern the product of the price of our product, right, students? So let us understand what are the various pricing methods, right? So in the first part, I'll be explaining you two methods, that is cost plus pricing and marginal cost pricing. And in the later next part, I'll make you understand the different other pricing strategies which can be adopted by the marketers. So the first is cost plus pricing. As we know that price is what? Price is basically the sum total of the cost which we are incurring with a little bit of margin, right? So here what I am letting you know, that is average variable cost plus average, this is markup or gross profit margin, that is the markup which the profit margin calculated on cost, right? So this average variable cost margin, or the what we call as gross profit margin, will be what? Will be the actually the margin calculated on variable cost. Similarly, what we are doing here, we have average fixed cost plus net profit margin, right? So this is the procedure of calculating cost plus pricing. First of all, what we'll do, we'll calculate the average variable cost, then we'll add up the gross profit margin, then we'll add average fixed cost, and we'll find out the net profit margin, right? So this is because cost incorporates both the things, the average fixed cost also and average variable cost also, and then we'll calculate the net profit margin, the profit margin which is calculated on both the cost, the variable cost and the fixed cost, right? This is the easiest method to price your product, right? Because we are taking and mostly used even, right? So cost plus pricing is useful in the following cases. One, in the public utility pricing, because these public utilities are not meant for profit making. So they generally price on just to recover their cost with a little bit of margin, so that this profit can be used for expansion, for say modernization and all. Since public utility pricing are only for serving a common man, they generally used cost plus pricing, right? Next comes the product tailoring. Product tailoring means when the product is manufactured as per the requirement of the customer. So you have to tell what, because here the specifications are rendered by the consumer. So you have to add up all the costs which are required to fill up to that specification, right? So here you cannot charge according to your own prejudices. You have to convince the customer that yes, these many things are used in your product manufacturing, so this will be the cost of the final price of your product. So whenever you are producing according to the requirements of the customer, we always use cost plus pricing. Next comes pricing products that are designed to the specifications of a single buyer. Sometimes what happens, you are that single buyer is of so much worth to you that you are putting in all your resources to fulfill the demand of that single buyer. So in that case also you generally employ, the companies generally employ cost plus pricing, because the fixed expenses are totally consumed by that single buyer. So that will the cost plus pricing is the most beneficial method. Since all the costs are considered, profit is a function of number of units produced, as the fixed cost will spread on more number of units, right? See students, as I told you that in case of cost plus pricing, we are considering both the cost, the fixed cost and the variable cost also. So variable cost, as you know, that is dependent on quantity, but fixed cost is independent of quantity. So if we increase number of quantity, what happens? The number of the fixed cost will be spread or will be distributed among more number of units. So per unit or average fixed cost will reduce and thereby improving your profit, right? So in case of cost plus pricing, profit is a function of number of units produced. Only because of one reason, we are also taking fixed cost in the calculation of total cost. Right, students? So let us understand it further. So I am giving you one example. A company is replacing product A with an updated version B and must calculate a base cost, to which will be added a markup in order to arrive at a selling price, right? The following variable costs have been established by reference to the company's experience with product. Since the company is willing to replace product A with the updated version of B, it has experience of product A, right? So the company can easily predict the cost which will be taken up by product B. Although they may be subject to an error margin of plus minus 10% under production conditions for B. It means they are taking a error margin of plus and minus 10%. So direct material will be pound 4, direct labor will be 1 by 4 hour per unit at the rate of 16 pound per hour. So that will come as 4 pound. Variable manufacturing overheads again would be 1/4 of hour of a machine time at the rate of pound 8 per hour. So that will give you 1 by 4 multiplied by 8, that will give you 2. So total variable cost per unit will come as pound 10. As the machine time for each B would be same as for A, the company estimates that it will be able to produce the same total quantity of B as its current production of A, which is 20,000 units. It means the company is will produce 20,000 of B, right? 50,000 machine hours may be regarded as the relevant capacity for the purposes of absorbing fixed manufacturing overheads. Current fixed costs are pound 2,40,000 for the production facilities, pound 2 lakh for selling and distribution, and pound 1,80,000 for administration. For costing purposes, the 20,000 units of B can be assumed to consume 10% of the total selling, distribution and administration cost, right? So let us see how this cost plus pricing is used in the pricing of updated version B. See, we are using alternative 1. It means we are only considering manufacturing cost. So variable production cost as above, like we have already calculated this as pound 10 per unit, right? So this is 0.10 per unit. Add allowance for underestimate of 10%. Here it is given that there may be an error margin of plus or minus 10%, right? So here we are adding 10% of pound 10, that is pound 1. So final variable cost per unit will come out as pound 11. Now we have to add manufacturing cost. Now what will be the manufacturing cost? See students, in the previous lectures while explaining you the absorption costing, I told you that the overhead absorption rate is always calculated on full capacity, right? So as you can see, the total fixed cost are pound 2,40,000 and how much capacity that machine takes, that 50,000 units, right? So it will give you as pound 4.8 per hour, right? So that will be the absorption rate, overhead fixed overhead absorption rate, right? And it will be absorbed at the rate of 1/4 hour of machine time, because it is here, it is written that the overhead, because see, it is given in the question that the company estimates that it will be able to produce the same total quantity of B as its current production of A, and moreover maybe the rate will be same, right? Here you can say, because we are producing with the same rate, with the same quantities may be produced, it means they are consuming the fixed overhead with the same rate, right? So that is why it is written as 1/4 hour of machine, because here in the variable overhead consumption we have used the same rate, 1/4 hour of machine time. So we are employing the same rate. So it is 1/4 hour of machine time with the rate pound 4.8 per hour, right? So that will give you 1.2. So adding up to all these figures, we'll get pound 12.2 as the base cost, right? So this will be your manufacturing base cost. So you can add 10%, you can add whatever margin you want to have on this particular version B, right? So in the second alternative, the administrative costs are also added, and in the third alternative, selling and distribution costs are also added. So we are taking the base rate as above 12.2 and add fixed administrative cost as 10% of pound 1,80,000. See, it is also given in the question that that 20,000 units of B can be assumed to consume 10% of the total selling and distribution and administration cost. That says the total cost are pound 1,80,000, but we are taking only 10%, because only 10% is consumed in the production of B. So 1,80,000 into 10%, that will give you pound 18,000. So total number of units produced of version B will be 20,000. So that we are taking as 0.9 as the per unit administrative cost. So that will give you the base cost as 13.1. See, 13.1 is the base cost when we are taking into account the administrative cost also. In the third version, we are taking selling and distribution cost also. So that I am taking forward the same base rate, that is pound 13.1, at fixed selling and distribution cost, again 10% divided by the number of units. So that will give you pound 1. So the resultant cost will be 14.1, right? So depending upon the producer philosophy or the manufacturer philosophy, the base rate varies from pound 12.2 to pound 14.1. The base cost rises with each alternative as an increasing proportion of the total cost is recovered, right? Because we are recovering more number of cost, we are recovering administrative cost here, we are recovering selling and distribution cost here. So what is happening? Since we are recovering more number of cost, our profit margins will go down. So the profit markup built into the pricing formula is therefore likely to fall with each alternative from 1 to 3, because we are accommodating more number of cost, right? So this is how the cost plus pricing goes, because we take total cost, then we add some margin which depends on the competition and all other factors I have discussed earlier. So this is how we go about cost plus pricing. Now what are the advantages of cost plus pricing? The required profit will be made if budgeted sales volume are achieved. If you know, we all know that if whenever cost and pricing strategies are adopted, or whenever we are planning for cost, the pivot is demand forecasting. So whenever we are forecasting demand, it means we are making standards, or we are budgeting our sales volumes, because every planning depends on one factor, that is what will be the quantity demanded. So if we are able to achieve our targets, if we are able to achieve our budgeted sales volume, we are also able to achieve our profits, right? So next is, it is particularly useful method in contract costing industries such as building, where a few large individual contracts can consume the majority of the annual fixed cost and the fixed costs are low in relation to the variable cost, right? So if you are only manufacturing for one single customer, or if you are making one single big unit, or that generally happens in case of contract costing industries, so they generally go about cost plus pricing, right? Assuming the organization knows its cost structure, cost plus is quick and cheap to employ. As I told you that it is very easy to understand and it's very easy to employ, very easy to implement. So, but provided the organization knows what are its cost components, what are the relevant costs to be added while taking the cost. Cost plus pricing can be useful in justifying selling prices to the customers, because you can simply say sahab padta nahi padta, right? Because it is not it if you go beyond that limit, what will happen? You will suffer from losses. So you can easily convince your customers that, see, this is my cost and I'm taking only this much of margin. So you can easily convince customer to buy your goods or services. Now let us see what can be the disadvantages. There will always be problems associated with selection of a suitable basis on which to charge fixed cost to individual products or services. See students, cost plus pricing is nothing but the extension of full absorption costing, right? So we have also already discussed the disadvantages of absorption costing at the in the unit 1, right? So you always you have to find out what should be the right basis to allocate to apportion these fixed costs, right? Because if you are wrong in selection of that basis, the entire costing will be wrong and thereby the pricing. If prices are wrong, you cannot sustain the competition in the market. So selecting a suitable base is very important in cost plus pricing. If prices are set on the basis of normal volume and actual volume turns out to be considerably low, overheads will not be full recovered from the sales and predicted profits may not be attainable. So this is the situation of what? It is the situation of under absorption. It means normal volume, as I told you earlier also, that absorption rates are always calculated on full capacity, right? But if the actual volume turn out to be low, what will happen? The overheads will not be absorbed and that will lead to your wrong profit calculation. You will not attain the profits because your overheads are under absorbed, right? So this is another problem with cost plus pricing. Most importantly, cost price plus pricing does not take into account such factors like competitor activity, because the orientation is altogether internal. We are only taking into consideration our cost. We are not taking into consideration what the customer is doing, because so this is the biggest advantage of cost plus pricing, that it does not leverages competitors. Cost plus overlooks the need for flexibility in the different stages of a product's life cycle. See, costing during a product life cycle I will be taking up in the 4th unit, but you students, you very well know that if the product is a decline stage, if the product is not very well accepted in the market because of technological advancements, what happens? Generally, the manufacturers lower down its prices, right? That goes with your black and white TVs, that goes with your normal plasma TVs and all, because they are at the decline stage of their life cycle. So in that case, cost plus pricing is not beneficial. We have to look that, yes, now my product is, since it is not acceptable in the market, let's mitigate whatever loss can be done, right? So these are the disadvantages associated with cost plus pricing. Because of such factors, the competitors have resorted to marginal cost pricing. Yes, this is marginal costing. Knowledge of marginal cost gives management the option of pricing below total cost when times are bad in order to fill capacity, right? Because in marginal costing, we only consider variable cost. Marginal cost assumes that once you have achieved the break-even point, you have recovered all your fixed cost. So what is left to recover? It is only variable cost. So we can lower down our prices in bad times if we want to fill our capacity, right? Because we know that we have already recovered the fixed cost. So what we need to recover? Only variable cost, right? It is particularly useful in pricing specific one-off contracts because it recognizes relevant cost and opportunity cost and as well as sunk cost, right? Because see, we know that in marginal costing, we know that say product A has, in the manufacturing of product A, we have already recovered all our fixed cost. So if we want to produce a special order of product, say product B, what it needs to be done? We have to recover only variable cost or the opportunity cost, right? So marginal cost give due emphasis to only relevant cost because fixed costs are generally recovered from our all other production processes, right? So it focuses attention only on the relevant cost or the opportunity cost, right? It also recognizes the existence of scarce or limiting resources. Students have also discussed this thing in the second unit, that's how to allocate your scarce resources by taking into consideration the contribution per unit of that limiting resource, right? So in case of cost plus pricing, you cannot allocate your scarce or limiting resources because it takes full cost, not only contribution, right? So let us understand it further with the help of an example. A company has been producing A successfully for a number of years and demand appears to be static into the foreseeable future of a market price of £15 per unit. A market has just developed in product B which the company could produce without additional investment in plant, right? And without increasing or refraining the existing labor force, right? Unfortunately, however, B uses the same basic direct material as product A, material C. So students, in this line, what is explained that we are not supposed to take into consideration the cost of plant and the cost of labor because it already exists there. But this material C is the opportunity cost because if you want to produce the product B, you have to curtail the production of A because it uses the same material C, which is in short supply. It means it is a limiting resource. The company must determine a minimum selling price for B below which it would not be worthwhile to divert resources from A. Cost for the two products are given in table 6.3. So this is the cost structure. See student, this data is given in the question itself. I am just explaining how the this factor, the existence of scarce or limited resources problem can be solved by using marginal costing. So direct material 6 units of C at the rate of 0.60, 5 units, it means the direct material which is consumed by A is 6 units, for material B it is 5 units. So it will give you total cost is £3, 3.6. Here in case of B it is 3. Direct labor are, which is, see, these resources are abundant, right? So simply rate is given. So the direct labor is half hour at the rate of £6. Similarly, half hour £6. So total is 3. Variable overhead 2.4 in case of A, 1 in case of B. Now the resultant contribution will variable cost will be 9 here, 7 here. Selling price 15. So contribution is 6, right? So contribution which is given by product A is 6, right? So contribution per unit of material C is what? £6 divided by 6 units, right? Because 6 units of C are consumed in production of product A. So since this is a limiting resource, so here we are finding contribution which is given by product A per unit of that limiting factor. So A is consuming 6 units of scarce material C. So the contribution per unit of material C is £1, right? So A produces a contribution of £6 using 6 units of C. That is a contribution per unit of C. The limiting factor is £1. B uses 5 units of C. The company must therefore seek a combination of £5 into £1. It means, so the price must cover the cost of the unit and the lost contribution from C. It means the price should be the total cost is not only £7 but the lost contribution £5 because it is this B is using 5 units of this scarce material C. So 5 units plus lost contribution is £1. So the minimum base price for a pound B should be what? The minimum cost should be 7 plus 5. This 5 is the lost contribution from production of this product A. This will be renunciated because we are diverting this input C to product B, right? So the base price should be at least pound 7 plus pound 5, that is pound 12. Right, students? Here I have explained you that pricing is not only governed by the competition, it is governed by so many factors like demand of the product, like cost of production and capacity, like the government policy, like tax structure, excise duties and custom duties. Similarly, the environmental policies which can also impact your pricing. So, I have explained you that these are the various factors which can govern prices. So, a manufacturer has the right to adopt various pricing methods and strategies, right? So, in the previous lecture, I explained you the cost plus pricing method and the marginal costing method. I explained you that in case of cost plus pricing method, we take into account both the cost, the variable cost and the fixed cost as well. So, majorly profit is governed by the number of units we produce because the fixed cost will be spread in more number of units, right? And cost plus pricing is generally used in the cases of contracts, in the cases where you are producing according to the specifications of the customer. But cost plus pricing has certain disadvantages that you cannot adopt cost plus pricing when you are working according to the product life cycle. Sometimes when the actual product demand or the actual sales doesn't meet up to the budgeted sales. See, in all such cases, cost plus pricing is not the right strategy, pricing strategy. So to overcome the disadvantages of cost plus pricing, marginal costing is used. In case of marginal costing, marketers use only relevant cost or opportunity cost to arrive at the right pricing, right? In that case, only incremental costs are considered and marginal cost pricing is well applicable in the cases where we suffer from single limiting factor situation, right? So these all things I have explained in the previous lecture. So in continuation to that, I'll be explaining you few more strategies which may be adopted by the marketers. The first is premium pricing. Premium pricing is above competition on a permanent basis. This can only be done if the product appears different and superior to competition, which normally means establishing a brand name based on one of the following. Right? See, there are certain products, there are certain brands in our surroundings which are generally highly priced. Those products are known as premium priced products. So, because these brands have created a niche for themselves and they only look for the high value customers. That happens only when the brand carries few characteristics. First of all, quality. If you are providing good quality products, customers see, we have to understand one thing, that customer is ready to pay anything. What he looks for value for money proposition, right? There is one saying in Hindi, "Sasta roy bar bar, महंगा roy एक बार." Right? So, if you are what a customer is looking for, customer is not looking for lesser price. In fact, customer is looking for value for money. If you are getting proper value for money, the customer will not hesitate in spending some rupees extra, some rupees more, right? So the companies like Lakme, the companies like Park Avenue, these names are known for their quality. So they are charging because they are producing quality products. Similarly, image and style, right? So the garments of Vero Moda, these are actually, they pursue the fashion trend. So that is why their midis and their female garments are actually costlier as compared to other brands. The next is reliability and robustness. If you are a reliable brand, it means you are trustworthy. It means every time, see, quality is one time. But if you are for giving the quality proposition every time, you build trustworthiness, you build credibility in the eyes of the customer. That is your reliability. Robustness means if you are actually moving according to the market requirement as the technology moves, as the customer requirement moves. So if you are producing according to the requirement of customers, the customer will not hesitate, will not feel hitch in paying extra money. So generally the customized products are priced a little bit higher. Next comes the durability. See, if you are buying a durable product, you will not be supposed to spend money in every second time, because the product is durable and the longevity of the product will compensate the extra money you pay. So all the companies who are vouching or who have durability as their USP, they generally price their products a little bit higher as compared to other brands. Like, so the products of Tata, the products of ITC, they are generally highly priced because of durability, because they are durable in nature. Next comes the after sales service. The companies like Maruti, the companies like Hyundai, the companies like Apple, they are known for their after sales service, right? So if the manufacturer is providing good after sales service, they are generally high, the products are generally highly priced. Extended warranties. So this is another reason where the products become a little bit higher, highly priced, because you are getting warranty for the extended period. When you get extended warranties, the cost of the spare parts will be covered under that warranty. So this is another reason when you can price your product higher from the existing brands. So the one strategy is premium pricing. Next comes the penetration pricing. It is just opposite of premium pricing. So penetration pricing is to start with a low price initially and subsequently increased when the demand for the product is established. See students, Geo is a very relevant example of penetration pricing. As you can remember, during the time of demonetization, they gave you free data. When you have tasted that free data, they gradually increased prices. So they have actually changed the entire market scenario. The market is changed from monopolistic to oligopoly. It means now there are only 2-3 players to name, like Vodafone Idea, which is actually on the verge of closure. Next comes Airtel, and then comes Jio. So, and in the government sector, we have only BSNL. So, to name, we have only 4 companies. Tata Docomo is merged with Airtel. So, you can see that because of this penetration pricing, it means because of such a low price, the competitors were not able to withstand, right? The same thing is adopted by Tide once in a time. The previously the market was dominated by either Surf Excel or Ariel, but that came somewhere around 80 rupee, say 120 rupees to 100 rupees per kg. But Tide made revolutionized the entire detergent industry, right? So Tide is another example of penetration pricing, right? But students, you have to understand that if the prices are set too low, the consumers may think that the prices have been kept low at the cost of the quality of the product. So it is you have to clearly draw a line that yes, my products are dearer, my products are less costly, but at the same time I am not compromising with the quality, right? See, this doubt has been faced by the Jio customers also, because they feel that they felt that since they are providing at a very low cost, the connectivity will not be good. But once they tested Reliance Jio, then most of the people adopted only because of word of mouth publicity, right? So these types of doubts too come in front of the customers when they feel that the prices are very low, right? So this is penetration pricing. Now the another is price skimming. Price skimming means you are charging higher prices, generally 3 or 4 times the ex factory price of a new product, to take advantage of the consumer behavior, right? To take advantage of liking of elite group of customers, right? So first of all, what is done? First of all, you are setting the prices high. You will skim the market. When you feel that yes, now I have covered the entire elite group of the customers, you will then drop down the prices, right? Then again, you will skim the market, you will cover the another segment, and then what will you do? You will again slash the prices and skim that level till the time you have full market saturation. So this is price skimming. This is done to a certain extent to cover large research and development cost quite quickly. So prices are set high 3-4 times of the ex factory price because you want to recover your R&D expenses quickly, right? The prices may be subsequently reduced when competitors come in, right? So you are actually not keeping the prices constant. You are gradually decreasing prices just to increase, just to enlarge your market coverage, right? So this is price skimming. Next comes price differentiation. See, price differentiation happens when you divide your market into different segments. These segments are identifiable, right? So, if the market can be split into different segments, each quite separate from the others and its own individual demand function. It means they are different in demand characteristics. It is possible to sell the same product to different customers at different prices, right? Marketing techniques can be employed to create market segmentation. If natural demarcation lines are not already in existence, marketing tactics, marketing strategies are used to create market segmentation if natural segmentation doesn't occur. Segmentation will usually be on the basis of one or more of the following. It means what you are doing, you are dividing market into different types of segments. So these segments can be on various bases like time. That is, rail travel is cheaper off peak, hotel accommodation, telecommunications and all these are actually cheaper off peak. Moreover, say if you go to a mall, you know that the movie tickets are costlier at the later ends of the day as compared to morning hours. So this is on the basis of time. The movie is same, the hall is same, but you have different charges for different timings, different slots. Quantity. Small orders at a premium, bulk orders at a discount. So if you are demarcating on the basis of quantity, so that actually happens in case of retailers and distributors. Distributors get larger discount because they are buying in bulk, but we as a small customers, we buy at MRP. So this demarcation is done on the basis of quantity. Now type of customer, if you are a student or if you are from any organizational, we have organizational profile rates also. If you are a employee of Tata, you will get such type of rebate. If you are employee of Reliance, you will get such type of rebate. So if you are a student, is you see, even if you go to the retail outlets, eateries like Barbecue Nation, even there you can use a student ID and you will get 10% relaxation in the total charge, right? So, moreover, if you are an employee of electricity department, the rate of electricity charges will be very much less as compared to a normal customer. So here, the demarcation is done on the basis of type of customer. Then comes the outlet or function. Different prices for wholesaler, retailers and end consumers, right? So who is actually owning the outlet and what is the function? So this is again the another reason for demarcation. Sometimes the demarcation is done on the basis of age also, because you can see that we have senior citizen cards, we have higher interest rates in FD for senior citizens. lesser ticket charges for senior citizens. So here the demarcation is done on the basis of age, right? Similarly, when you to go for a travel, the children will be charged, children less than of 10 years age will be charged less in railways and all. You have to buy half ticket for them. So these are the demarcations done on the basis of age. So sometimes the demarcation is done on the basis of geographical regions also. For the rural area, the electricity rates are cheaper. In case of urban areas, the electricity rates are dearer. So this is the price differentiation on the basis of geographical area. So students, you have to understand, when the same type of product is sold in different markets but at different rates, it is known as price differentiation. It means you are charging different price in different markets, right? Now, next is loss leader pricing. See, when a product range consists of one or more main products and a series of related optional extras which the customer can add on to the main product, the supplier can set a relatively low price for the main product and a high one for the extras. Obviously, the aim is to stimulate sufficient demand for the former, it means for the original product, to ensure the target return from sales of the latter. Now, I am giving you one example. If you take the example of Gillette razor, the cost of one Gillette razor is not very high, but the cost of blade is very high, right? So that is because we are charging less for the main product, but we are charging more for the extras which you need, that is the blades, right? So this is known as loss leader pricing. The bundling is done in such a way that the loss you are suffering from here, the loss you are suffering from the main product, that will be compensated from the add-ons which are charged higher than the main product, right? That goes with the photocopy machines also, that goes with the cartridge also, because the printer is not costly but the cartridge is costly. So this is known as loss leader pricing. Now comes the product bundling. Bundling is putting a package of products together to make, for example, a complete kit for customers which can then be sold at a temptingly low price, right? It is a way of creating value for customers and increasing company profits. It is a strategy that is often adopted in times of recession when organizations are particularly keen to maintain sales volume. Like Jio plus Life, this is again product bundling, because Life is not so much it's not a fast moving mobile company in the market. So it has combined with Jio. So it has given push to this brand. Similarly, we have TV channel packages, we have summer holiday packages and all. So this is known as product bundling, right? Next comes discounting pricing. See, a discount in pricing is one another way to get cash in quickly. Sometimes when the marketers try to reduce their operating cycle, what they do, they provide discount so that they can recover their capital easily. This is not always a financial sound strategy, as the firm may lose more in sales revenues from the discount than they would lose in interest from a bank loan for the same amount, right? So because sometimes it may be dangerous for the company, because the sales they lose, it may not compensate the interest charge from the bank loan. This is generally done to differentiate between different types of customers, wholesale or retailers, right? Because wholesalers, you generally give quantity discount, and retailers too, but the discount percentage is different for wholesalers and for retailers. Next important aspect is to increase sales volume during a poor sales period without dropping the price permanently. Because if you drop the price permanently, what will happen? The customer may have a notion that you are somewhere compromising with the quality, or yes, the product is not selling good in the market, right? So to overcome such type of prejudices or hindrances, what the manufacturer do, generally they give discounts to maintain the sales level or increase the sales level. That is why we have clearances sale every season. Some industries give discounts as normal practice. For example, the antique trade and some retail shops seems to have semi-permanent sales. Like generally, if you go with the medicines and all pharmacy companies, they generally give 10% of discount, right? So they make a general practice of giving 10% or 7% or 5% of discount. So next, perishable goods are often discounted towards the end of their life or end of the day, or seconds are often sold off cheaply, right? So when you have say sale of seconds, they are generally sold at discount. Moreover, when you are buying some perishable good, so if you are moving towards the end of the day, you will get at generally cheaper prices, right? So this is how discount can be used to overcome the temporary problems. Other pricing strategies. See, when other pricing strategies may be controlled pricing and pricing with additional features. See, controlled pricing means when the government is intervening in the pricing process. See, if you go by Essential Commodities Act, you can see that the prices are controlled by the government. You cannot raise the price after a certain level. You have seen that every year government is announcing minimum support price for in the Rabi and Kharif season for wheat and sugarcane and rice, etc. Right? So these are the situations of controlled pricing. Controlled pricing means the prices are controlled or regulated by government. Petrol and diesel is one another example where the controlled pricing is exercised. You cannot rise or decrease price according to your own intentions. You have to look at the government rules and regulations also. Now comes the pricing with additional features. See, in this case, what generally manufacturers do, they set a base price for base model, right? And if you want to add features, you have to pay extra, right? So in this way, you can convince customer that yes, I'm not charging more. I'm only giving you basic features. You are giving me extra money because you are adding more features to the product or services, right? I'm giving you one example. If you are buying a car of basic model, what you will get? You will get only essential features, but you can add on a stereo at the additional price. You can add, say, rear view mirrors at additional prices. So these are the you can even buy out the covers of seats. So these are the additional features provided by the car manufacturers, but they are paid on paying extra, right? If you are going to a hotel, you may ask for say extra bed. That will be the additional feature, but you are paying extra for that bed, right? So here the pricing is set for the basic product, but if the customer wants more, if the company says no, it will hamper the image of that particular brand. So what they do, they charge extra for additional features, right? So this is how they are making revenue, and at the same time they are creating goodwill in the eyes of the customer also, that yes, this brand is accommodating my requirements, right? So this is another pricing strategy. Now pricing of skills. See students, these are the times of the increase in the service industry. So pricing of skills is very important nowadays. This is generally governed by the demand and supply situation. Moreover, the opportunity cost becomes more relevant in case of pricing of services, because see, machine you can replace, you can create a standby for a machine, but you cannot create a standby for a skill, because the skill requirement is specific and very peculiar to a human being, right? So it is generally governed by the demand and supply situations in the market, right? Next comes the pricing of spares. The spares which are generally easily available, they will be less priced, and which are not easily available, which are proprietary items, may be priced slightly high. But we have to see one thing, that the general thumb rule is that the total price of all the assembled parts should not be more than the price of the assembled whole. It means you must have certain margin to cover up your profit, because if you are if you are utilizing the entire cost, where will your profit go? So the total price of all the assembled parts should not exceed the price of the total assembled product, right? Next, lastly, we have pricing of leases and licenses. See, pricing of leases and licenses is generally done at the from the point of view of the customer. It depends upon the utility or the consumer perceives, right? So if the price is set accordingly, if the customer feels that or the consumer feels that it is important for me, that may be charged higher. If the machine you are giving on lease is important for the consumer, if the consumer is getting high utility, you may charge high, right? So this is how the pricing of leases and licenses is done. So students, this is all for your pricing part. I hope you have understood that although pricing is in the hands of the manufacturer or the marketer, but still it is very much governed by so many factors like competition, market, the availability of substitutes, the changing technology. These all features control pricing. So students, have a nice time. We'll meet again with the upcoming topics. Thank you.